Today we have a very nice topic. But first of all, we are going to talk about what objectives are we going to cover in this class. The first objective, as you can see, is to define and give examples of models of communication. Number 2 is to define the components of communication and purposes of speech. And number 3, to analyze different public speaking competences. Let's start with a little introduction of this. In public speaking, there are different types of speeches. Of course, every speech has a purpose because we use a model, and every model has elements and components of communication as well as speaking competences. So you have to cover all of these topics to be able to give and deliver a speech. First of all, we have the first model of communication that is linear, and the second that is transactional. So there are only 2 models that we are going to study in this class. So let's take a look at the first. In linear model of communication, we have 3 main and big parts, elements, components, where you can see here you have the sender, which is the person who is speaking and delivering the speech, is the one who is transmitting the message. Then we have the channel. What is the apparatus for carrying the message? That means the media. You use a cell phone, you use a TV, you use a television, you use a cinema. So you are in a theater. So what is the channel that you use to convey your speech? And of course, we have the last one that is receiver. That is the person who receives, who listens, the audience of your speech. Okay, now let's take a look at the first model, the linear model of communication. So if you can see, there are 3 elements that we discussed previously. The first one is the sender, the person who talks, gives a message. The channel is the physical apparatus that you use to convey the message, and the one that receives the action, what is called receiver. So it's the listener, your audience. The second model of communication, it's called transactional. And this has more elements that you have to study, read, and analyze. So these components are related, are interdependent. That means that they are relating to one another. It's like a cycle. So you can see there are 5 main sub-elements, components of this model of communication. The first one is encoding and decoding processes. The second is the communicator. The third one is the message. The fourth one is the channel. And the last one is the noise. We will study and we will practice and talk a little bit about each one of these later on. First of all, so according to this well-known author, there are 7 elements in the communication process. We call number 1 the encoding and decoding. So what is encoding about? Well, it's the process of taking an idea or mental image associated with the words that you produce. So as you are talking, you have a mental image. What is decoding? It's the reverse process. It's the other way around. You listen to the words carefully, thinking about them, meditating, reflecting, and then you turn these words into images, of course, in your mind. Now, let's continue with the second component of this process. It's called the communicator. Refers to all people in the interaction or speech setting. It is used instead of saying the sender, the listener, the speaker. So we use communicator in general terms. Now, let's move on the message. Involves those verbals, communication, and non-verbals means body language, that are interpreted by others because they convey meaning. They have a special meaning to convey. The next one is called the channel. As you already know, it means through which message travels, which physical thing travels the message. It should be face-to-face communication, or we have any other channel. Of course, with this, you have to involve what? The senses, the human senses. You see, you hear, you touch, you smell, and you taste. So with this sentence, you can perceive the message that the communicator is sending you. The next element is the noise. Anything that interferes with the message, transmission or reception, any interference around you that can block you or interfere with the communication. Number 6, we have the worldview, overall framework which an individual sees. You know, if you socialize with some people, background knowledge that you have, previous experience that you have, this is what we call worldview. And the last one, well, this slide is the context in which the speech takes place. It's the actual physical setting of communication. It can be in an apartment, can be a setting, can be at the university, a classroom, in your house, etc. So the context will be any place that you talk and communicate. Let's see, and let's take a look at this figure so you can visualize better. Here you have a nice picture of the whole elements of the communication process. So you see the sender, the receiver, we call it communicator. So now you know that is the term that we use, communicator. So we have the message, okay, that you see. The message is what you talk, what you convey, the main ideas that you send. Of course, there are elements with the worldview, you know, all your beliefs, opinions, previous experiences. And then you have what we call the noise, the interference. So anything that interferes with you, listening carefully, the message, the main ideas. Of course, you have this kind of feedback because communication is this process, coming and going, back and forth. Now, let's take a look at the types of speeches and purposes. Here we have main 3 purposes. Of course, there should be more, but we are going to focus on these 3 ones. And there are speeches to inform your audience, which is called number 1. So here you share information. You just transmit a particular person, a biography, a place, you describe the place, an object, a process, a step-by-step process, a concept definition, describing or explaining something. It's just transmitting, you know, like reading and telling your audience about what you have read or studied. The second one is called persuade. Here you have to think more because you will have to try to convince people, you know, to try to think a different way. Here you have to try to appeal to the beliefs, attitudes of the people. So you have to give good arguments so you can convince people. It's not only talking, it's just use this kind of attitude, this ability of talking and convincing people to do or think something. And also, the last one, you can use to commemorate or entertain or special occasions. So here is when you make a toast. You say, I have a toast for the marrying, for this wedding, for anniversary, or you tell a joke, a funny story, an anecdote, an amazing anecdote that happened to you or somebody else. Here we have the speaking competences. The speaking competences are the abilities, skills that you have to develop. That means little by little you are developing these competences. As you are practicing, you go ahead and practice, and then you will be competent on this. The first thing to do is to use a topic in such a way that you use it with a purpose. So that depends on the occasion that you are going to give the speech. It's a wedding, it's a class presentation, it's a business presentation, so it depends on that. The second one is that you have to formulate an introduction. But this introduction should be very catchy, engaging, interesting. Could be one introduction that makes you think and reflect and probably predict what it's going to be about. The next one is to have a clear organization. Sometimes you don't think about the order, the sequence of your ideas, but here it's necessary to have a pattern organization that you have a sequence of elements, main ideas, subpoints, and ideas and subpoints. So you have, it's like planning, it's organizing. You have like a sketch. So you need to do that. So number 4, you have well-supported ideas. So you have to support what you say. If you say you like a color, you have to give justifications, reasons why you like the color. The next one is the closure and conclusion. So you have to summarize the main points of your speech and back to the thesis statement that you have. And number 6, you have a clear and vivid language. So you have to use a language that is very clear, that is vivid, that people really can understand. Of course, that you have to use good grammar, pronunciation, intonation, pitch, etc. Number 7, it's suitable vocal expressions. You know, you have a good voice, you have a clear voice, you have to go slow, or you have to go fast. So you have to be enthusiastic, happy, because you are projecting feelings and emotions. Then you have corresponding nonverbal to demonstrate behavior. You have to take a good posture, facial expressions, gestures, eye contact, because it's natural. When you talk, when you communicate, you do that. And then you have to adapt it to the audience. So think about people, the kind of people, the background. So you dosify, and you have the chance to modify your vocabulary and experiences. And the last 2 ones are that you have to use visual aids. You need visual aids because people understand by watching, seeing. So you need good visual aids, graphics, etc. And the last one is convincing persuasion. So you have to convince people about your idea. You need to support it. You need to collect, you need to read, you need to look for everything just to give a nice message to convince people. Thank you so much for your attention.